Hi Year 11, we're going to start a brand new topic called Stratified Random Sampling. Stratified Random Sampling is where you take a sample from each group within a population. Now, a population could be anything from a number of people, number of animals, number of items. So, an example of a population would be the members of Dungannon Golf Club. Now, the members of Dungannon Golf Club can be divided into groups. For example, you could have the senior male members, there's one group. You could have senior female members, there's another group. And you could have juvenile members, there's another group. Now, when we take a sample from each group of a population, the sampling formula applies to every single group. And the sampling formula is shown below. So on the left hand side of the equal sign, you have the sample size of the group divided by the overall sample size. And on the right hand side of this formula, you have the population size of the group divided by the overall population size. So the fraction on the left is relevant to the sample. The fraction on the right is relevant to the actual population, and those two fractions are equal to each other. Now, very shortly we're going to be using this formula in practice to work out an unknown quantity. And instead of writing it all out in English, we abbreviate the fractions. So sample size of the group is known as SSG, sample size of group. The overall sample size is abbreviated to SS, sample size. And then over here on the right hand side, the population size of a group is known as PSG, population size of group. And then the overall population size, we abbreviate that to PS. So you must, as I say, learn this sampling formula that applies to every group within a population. So you can see here in this formula there are four quantities. Our job will always be to work out one of those four quantities. Now, in order to do that, you need to know at least the other three. You need to know 3 out of the 4 quantities here in order to find the other unknown. So, that's exactly what we're now going to do. We're now going to start applying this sampling formula. So let's look at example number 1. Okay, so example 1 says there are 3 driving schools, driving school A, driving school B and driving school C in Dungannon. They have 70, 80 and 100 students respectively taking driving lessons. It says a stratified sample of 50 students having driving lessons in Dungannon is to be taken. How many pupils should be selected from each driving school? So what we have up here are the actual populations of each group. Okay, remember the groups are driving school A, driving school B and driving school C. And these are the actual numbers of pupils attending each of those schools. So we know the population size of every single group. We're taking a stratified sample of 50 students. So what that means is we're going to be taking some students from A, some students from B, some students from C, such that they all add together to give 50. It says how many pupils should we select from each school. So we need to work out the sample size for each of these groups. Okay, the sample size of each group. In other words, the number of students we're going to select from each group. So let's start with driving school A. So again, we put a title down first, school A. And we immediately write down the abbreviated sampling formula. So remember, on the left hand side of the equal sign, it represents the fraction for the sample. So it's always SSG, sample size of the group, divided by the overall sample size, and that's equal to the population size of the group divided by the overall population size. So remember, make sure the formula is written down correctly in its abbreviated form. Left-hand side is the fraction for the sample, right-hand side is the fraction for the actual population. Okay. Now, we have to identify what we want. I did say a few minutes ago, we want the sample size. We want to work out how many students we need to select from school A to go into the sample. So it's the sample size of this group that we're looking for. So identify what we want. Now, in order to use this formula, we need to know the other three quantities. So let's see if we actually know them. SS is the overall sample size. Well, you know that the overall sample size is 50. PSG is the population size of driving school A. So the population size of driving school A is 70, because it says driving school A has 70 students respectively. So PSG is 70, the actual size of driving school A. And PS stands for the overall population size. In other words, the total number of pupils who are actually doing driving lessons. So that's 70 plus 80 plus 100. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sub all of those values into the formula. So we've got SSG over 50, and that's equal to 70 over 70 plus 80 is 150, plus another 100 is 250. So we've got a nice little straightforward equation here that we're going to solve, and we're going to cross multiply because there's only one fraction on each side of the equal sign. So we're going to get 250 SSG, and that's equal to 50 multiplied by 70 is going to give us 3,500. We're now going to divide both sides by the coefficient of SSG. And then we're going to do a bit of cancelling. The 250s cancel on the left, so we're just going to be left with SSG. And then on the right, we're going to divide 3,500 by 250. And that's just going to give us 14. So what that means is the sample size of Group A or School A is 14. 14 students need to be selected from School A to go into the sample. Okay, and we've now got to do exactly the same thing for School B and School C. So let's go now to School B. So for School B, again, we write out the sampling formula that applies to every group within a population. So sample size of group divided by sample size, overall sample size. And that's equal to population size of that group divided by the overall population size. And again, we need to identify what we want, and then hopefully we'll know the other three quantities. So we're looking for the sample size of School B. In other words, we want to work out how many students we need to select from School B to go into the overall sample. So it's SSG that we want. Again, the overall sample size is 50. The population size of School B is, if we go back to the question, 80. And again, the overall population size is the same as what we had before, 70 plus 80 plus 100. So again, we're going to sub in all of those values, and then hopefully we're going to cross multiply again. So we've got SSG over 50, and that's equal to 80 over 70 plus 80 plus 100 is 250, and then again we're going to cross multiply. Divide both sides by 250, the coefficient of SSG. Again, cancel on the left hand side, and we're just going to have SSG, the sample size for school B, and then again divide 4,000 by 250, and that's just going to give us 16. So what we've now worked out is the number of students we need to select from driving school B to go into the overall sample. Okay, final school C. So again, we want to work out the number of students we need to select from school C to go into the sample. So write out the sampling formula for the group. So SSG, sample size of that group, divided by overall sample size, SS, equals population size of that group divided by overall population size. And again, what are we looking for? Well, we're asked to get the sample size of that group. In other words, the number of students we need to select from school C to go into the sample. So that's what we want. The sample size, again, is just 50. That's the overall sample size. And then up to the other fraction at the top, population size of school C is, again, if we flick back to the question, so C is the third letter and the third number is 100. So there's actually 100 students who actually go to driving school C. So that's 100, the actual population size of that group. And again, PS is the overall population size. Again, exactly the same as what it was in the other calculations. So 70 plus 80 plus 100. So now, again, we're going to sub everything in and work out the sample size for school C. So SSG, sample size for school C, over 50. And that's equal to 100 over 250. Cross multiply again. So we're going to get 250 SSG. And that's going to give us 5,000. Again, divide both sides by coefficient. And again, do some cancelling. 250s cancel over here. So we're going to be left with SSG. And then again, divide 5,000 by 250, and that's just going to give us 20. So what that means is the sample size of school C is 20. We need to select 20 students from school C to go into the overall sample. So select 20 students from school C. So To summarize, we're going to put our three answers together as one answer. So we have to select 14 students from driving school A. We need to select 16 students from driving school B, and we need to select 20 students from driving school C. Now, here's how we check our answer. These are the numbers of students from each driving school that have to go into the sample. Now, we were told that the overall sample size has to be 50, so we need to check, do these individual values add to give 50? Well, 14 plus 16 is going to give us 30, plus 20 is 50, so we're absolutely correct. So just the final point, check and indeed we're correct.